Thank you so much for joining us here today. We love seeing your faces here in person. We do also have a few people joining us here virtually, and we're filming the entire session, so I would love if everybody is respectful of having their phone quiet so we don't hear any funky sounds during the recording and during the virtual event here. We're really excited to have you over here. My name is Tanya. For those that don't know me from all the PourMyBeer YouTube channels video yet, I am the head of marketing at PourMyBeer and PourMyBeverage, and I am here at Stanley Beer Hall today in Aurora. For those that don't know where we are, I'm here with Jim Wright, the director of operation here at Stanley. We're going to take you from the beginnings of Stanley Beer Hall all the way to its present success. So there's going to be some great knowledge bombs that Jim is going to share, and I'm excited to hear those. Yeah. We also want to take a little moment here. Where do I have Jeff? Yeah, Jeff is right there. We also want to take a little moment here and thank our partner here at Peak Draft Services. Jeff, thank you so much for sponsoring the event. For those that are not familiar with Peak Draft Services, they helped out with the cooler and with the draft system setup of Stanley Beer Hall. So after we are done with the Lunch and Learn, you are welcome to go and take a peek in there and also ask Jeff any question. Jeff is helping multiple other PourMyBeer locations here in Colorado, and I believe even outside, right? So he definitely has lots of experience with self-pour setup and you know what it really takes to make the magic happen, right? And not seeing foamy beer. So he's your guy. If you have any tech question on the draft system side of things, go over there. And I think without further ado, we can kick things off. So I have Jim, like I said, Director of Operation here at Stanley Beer Hall. Thank you so much, Jim, for meeting me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for organizing this. Thank you, everybody, for being here in person and virtually online. So I'm humbled that you've asked me to do this. So I'll try to pass on some of the pain points and things I've learned here without being too boring.
I don't think that's going to be the case. We're excited to learn from you. So Jim, before we dive into the story of Stanley Beer Hall and everything, can you tell us a little bit about your background in the hospitality industry and what really got you to Stanley Beer Hall eventually?
Well, I've been in the industry longer than I care to admit, so I'll just leave it at that. So I'll start with 20 years and you can add on whatever you think is on top of that. So I've had the good fortune of working for some really great companies before I ended up in kind of my own companies and having a consulting business. I worked for Rock Bottom. The founder of Chili's had me open his new chain. I was the head of corporate culture for Rock Bottom for a couple of years back when there was only one Rock Bottom when we were setting up the whole company. So if any of you are old enough to remember how busy the Rock Bottom was downtown, I was in the brew business back then in a really crazy atmosphere. I got to see a really great operation and culture, and I've been able to take what I've learned from that and spread it throughout the businesses that I've been fortunate enough to be part of since then. More recently, I was the head of the director of operations for Kevin Taylor Restaurant Group. For those of you that are in Denver, that's all the operations of the Denver Art Museum, all the events. We also had the restaurants and all the operations for the Denver Performing Arts Complex. I never say that right, not one time.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, which, by the way, is the second largest performing arts complex in the country. So we had all of the concessions, all of the operations there. And also Restaurant Kevin Taylor, which is the only 4-star, 4-diamond restaurant in Denver. It's too bad that it's not there anymore, but it was fantastic. So got to work in a very elevated experience. Learned a lot in hospitality from a James Beard awarding 4-diamond, 4-star chef for a long time, and got a good friend out of it. Kevin and I are still friends. Went on from there I was the opening director of operations for Union Station, so I brought that project out of the ground for Larimer Square. That was a monster that I almost left the industry after doing because it was so difficult, but there were 3 of us that ran the whole project. There was the operations side, the land management or property management side, and then myself for the operations side for all of the operations in there and the interface with the tenants and stuff like that. That was a project that we did 23,000 people the first day we opened, so that was tough. Great project, glad to be part of it. It's a centerpiece of Denver. Proud to have been both with the Larimer Group and to do that project. After that I left, I own a technology company, my Access Point POS, that we developed when I was with Kevin Taylor. It's also the only fully interfaced POS with PourMyBeer system. We have it in this location. You'll see it also tonight at Golden Mills. So I went to work with that company for a few years before Kevin, who's also loosely associated with this operation, with Stanley Marketplace. The owners of Stanley Beer Hall asked Kevin to help them. They were struggling after their first year of operations. It was a traditional restaurant, and Kevin recommended that they talk to me, and well, here I am.
Awesome.
So I think that's enough of my boring resume, but
it's impressive.
Yeah,
it's impressive. I'll be quizzing you guys on that, so hopefully you take notes. Just kidding. It's hard for me to remember all of that, and this is not the first time I'm hearing it. But thank you so much for providing that. Let's dive right in. My first question here in the Getting Started section for Jim is, Jim, can you tell us a little bit more about evolution of Stanley Beer Hall, really what it took, back in the day when you opened, when you weren't here yet, but what the process really was like, what made you to come join the team, and also why self-pour and not a traditional setup?
Well, originally, and I was part of the design. I was involved because Kevin's involved with the whole building. So I was part of this whole Stanley Marketplace when it was still kind of a back of the napkin idea to change Stanley Marketplace, which is has a really cool history. So if you get to read that while you're here, I'll save you that right now. But so I was part of the design of the restaurant in here through Kevin. They wanted to do a traditional restaurant, the owners here, who are also part of the owners, the founders of Stanley Marketplace. So they designed a traditional restaurant in this location. Well, they were struggling. They lost a significant amount of money for the first year, and that's when I came in, as I mentioned. And after I was here for a couple of weeks, what I realized was that due to its location and how the crowds came in, there was somewhere between 90 and 120 minutes a day to make all the money that you had to make throughout the day. Lunch is kind of slow, as you can see right now. We have some business and such, but it really is a late afternoon, early evening crowd. And the place would go from empty to full in 15 minutes. And we have almost 400 seats here. So 400 seats, for any of you that run a traditional seating restaurant, you can't just seat everybody and then take a bunch of orders and expect all the drinks and the food to come out at once. So I realized the problem was a bottleneck. I live about 10 minutes from here, and there was I think the first self-tap location in Colorado is in my neighborhood, and I just happen to frequent it once in a while. Just once in a while. Yeah. And then after I was here a couple nights, I was walking through my neighborhood, and it just struck me that, self-pour, that can solve this issue of getting people drinks. And one of the biggest issues before was sometimes food would hit the table after about 30 minutes for appetizers, and their cocktails hadn't even hit the table yet. So people were having a really horrible experience here for a traditional dining experience. What was great about the neighborhood was there wasn't a lot of options, so people kept trying to come back, so they kept beating their head against the wall, going, well, maybe they'll get it better, maybe they'll get it better. Well, the structure or the systems in place wouldn't allow that. You just can't get that many drinks over the bar, that much food out of the kitchen in a traditional restaurant in that amount of time. So that was October of 2017, and about 60 days later, after a little coercion, I convinced ownership to put in a self-tap wall. So what you see behind me where the self-tap wall is, this used to be the bar. So there was this unusually shaped bar and this open kitchen theme, which in a restaurant that can't get food out is a really bad idea, because everybody's just watching everybody staring at the window and no food's coming out. You're like, you need 700 plates right now, and there's 2, and here's some fries. So it was really not a good situation. So that wasn't why I blocked it off. This just happened to be the only place to put a cooler. So this is actually a stick-built custom cooler that we put in. I made the mistake of going with the wrong company for the self-tap system. We'll get to that a little later. But Jeff helped us install and get through the initial installation and put in the self-tap system. So going to an open seating, so when our guests check in now, it's self-seating, get all of your own beverages. We take care of table service for you here. That's our workflow here. And I didn't want to change the table service because of what we were before, so I didn't want to rip out all of the service in the place. I didn't want it to be that dramatically different, so I was trying to hang on a little bit of what the old crowd wanted and throw in a new twist so that we could produce more food. I also simplified the menu, made a mandate of how fast food had to come out. Once you actually started making the ticket, we couldn't have long cook times, so we have a little bit of a kind of a traditional, simplified but traditional brewery menu, which if you scan the QR code on the table, you can see what our menu is. It's so that we can produce all that food in a short amount of time with that kind of volume coming in. So with 400 people sitting down in 15 to 30 minutes, it works pretty well now.
Great.
There are some pains, but it works pretty well now.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit more about that path to the self-pour success. You mentioned you started with another provider. Can you tell us what provider and what were your main issues along the path?
So we started with I Pour It. I didn't know about anybody else. It happened to be the same provider that operates the location that's in my neighborhood. They seemed happy with it to a point, and I didn't know about you guys. So about PourMyBeer, you guys, sorry. PourMyBeer. So we installed, when we first started, everything was good. We had some issues on the install side. Jeff, you remember that conversation that had nothing to do with you, had to do with I Pour It. And initially things were okay, but then we started having hardware failures. So they have an old style, at the time, tablet, and the tablets we had another issue that we had to keep resetting the tablets every day for a couple of months, and I had to figure that out. They couldn't help us with that. So we were really a little bit on our own on the support side of things. The tablets had internal batteries. They would kind of burst because they had to be plugged in all the time. They operated on like a cell phone charger, and it just caused a lot of problems. So every morning I came in, I had to reset half a dozen to a dozen tablets, go back and test things. And then we started having to have tablets replaced. And initially, they were good about that, and then they weren't. So how I came to PourMyBeer was we were opening another location, Broadway Market, and Jeff had actually, our beer wall installer, Jeff Dillingham, had actually suggested that I give you guys a call because he had heard he had done something with you before and said that you guys seem to have this figured out. So when we were doing Broadway Market, we decided to go with PourMyBeer. And in that process is when we started the conversation for the integration, and with Ed Lazarick, your VP of Sales, discussed retrofitting this because of the experience we were having here. And at the time, while we were opening Broadway Market, it had gotten so bad that the screens were down, and I actually just had pieces of paper that I had to print out every day and put it over the beer wall. So people walked in, it looked like a trailer park for a while. It was bad. I have pictures, I'm happy to share them. But it got to the point where it was embarrassing, and I had just given up because we knew we were doing PourMyBeer. So that's kind of how we got there. So it was a pretty rough experience. I can't imagine if we would have stuck with them how our beer wall would look at this point. So we might not have one. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but it's been great, and I don't have any of those issues with PourMyBeer. So very happy with the changeover. It was worth the investment. We bought a second beer wall. Yeah. Luckily we didn't have to build another cooler. It was just the tablets, but it was worth every penny.
Well, hopefully some people watching this video later, or even some present here, can learn from your mistake and don't have to buy a second beer wall. So.
I've got some other mistakes if you want to hear about them.
We'll dive into those later. Now, in the getting started section, this is a question we get asked a lot, especially with new operators that are just coming to the industry and are really looking for the perfect location. We get this question all the time. How do you know you have found the perfect location? And I know that specifically for you, Stanley Beer Hall, you weren't here to really look for the location, but you are involved with many other PourMyBeer locations and venues that are operated with the system, and we've been part of those since the beginning. So can you tell us a little bit more about that topic and about how you really know and how you look for that perfect location?
So you never know 100%. There's a feeling, and there's really, outside of the mechanics of going through demographics and all that kind of stuff, and A location, B location, rating them and such like that, there's a little bit, this industry is an artistic industry. From the creativity of the chefs to the experience inside and such like that. It really is, it's the entertainment industry, it's not the food industry. And that's, I think, where a lot of operators make the mistake, is that when people come here, they're not spending the money that they're going to spend at the grocery store. This is their entertainment budget when they come here. So you have to think about both the experience on the entertainment side, but also when you're picking out a location, the experience they're going to have at your location. They're not just, it's not like, I'm sorry, Chipotle, but Chipotle is, you're going to get food. And it's good, it's what they do, and that's where they're going. But when they come to a place like this, they're coming to be entertained, both by the people that are here, the quality of food that comes in, but by the atmosphere, the location, the placemaking, everything else. And you have to, in this artistic world that we live in, you have to stand in the space or stand outside the space, and you have to be able to see it and see the whole picture in your head and just imagine it, visualize it, and then walk through the whole experience that your guest is going to have while they're in the location. And if you can see that, and it's something that you want to enjoy, knowing the industry as well as you do from the entertainment standpoint, then you have a sense of whether or not it's a great location. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, there's a lot of, once you get back to the mechanics of it, of going through how many people live in the neighborhood, what's the density, what's the age group, does the age group match the experience I'm trying to provide, things like that. All those things do matter, mm-hmm. but you can't build an experience for 50-year-olds that when a 20-year-old neighborhood or vice versa. So you really have to think about how that works. What's great about the self-tap world is it's good for everybody. One of my favorite stories I have a number of these, but seeing people, just a smile on somebody's face, is one of my buddies' fathers was in his 80s and had never seen anything like this, my buddy Jay. And, sorry Jay. His dad was an old architect, had retired a long time before that. And he brought his dad in. His dad was like, he was really kind of a curmudgeon about it. I mean, he was 80 something. That just kind of goes with that, I guess. I'm sure I'll be there. And Jay brought him in and showed him how to use the beer wall. This was a couple weeks after he opened, before we were having problems, so it was all working. And his dad spent the entire night just going up and down the beer wall and had the biggest smile on his face, and he's like, "This is the coolest place I've ever been."
That's awesome.
And it's one of my favorite moments of this whole journey, because it was my buddy's dad, and I've spent some time around him. So there's a lot of, I still get little tingles from it. There's a lot of good stories like that. So what's great about this is you can build it for any age, and if you have the beer wall ambassadors that walk them through the experience, what's really great about that is after they've done something like that, then they want to show somebody else. And his dad was showing other people at the beer wall that night. This 80-year-old guy, let me show you how this works. It was so awesome. It was so awesome.
Did you offer him a job as a beverage wall ambassador?
I did not. I don't think my insurance would cover an 80-year-old running around here, but no, it was great. I saw him a few times after that. And he talked about it every single time I saw him. So it was
That's
great.
fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. Would you be able to say some must-haves for the locations that, like, really, you know, if people are able to put that down as like a foot traffic? I know you've mentioned a few things, obviously demographics, but some must-haves that they should really go through?
So the surrounding neighborhood matters. You need to know, A, what your competition is. And you have to think about how the other restaurants in the neighborhood are working. So when I was running Kevin's group, we were down around the Performing Arts Complex, and we had a lot of restaurants within walking distance. It was great for me because I had 5 restaurants that I could walk them back and forth across the street from to run when we were busy. I didn't have to get in my car, drive across town like I do now from here, and I have to drive up to Golden if there's an issue, and I drive down to McGregor and some other operations I'm involved with. But there's a critical mass of number of seats in the neighborhood and South Broadway went through this problem big time. That's why a couple of places are rotating, is that there's only so much business in the neighborhood. So unless there's pent-up demand, when you're doing your business plan, we'll talk about this later, but if you think you're going to do $3 million a year, are you going into a neighborhood like Stanley did, where there was $3 million of need, but it didn't exist? That's an opportunity. If you're going into a neighborhood that there's no additional demand, and you build what you expect to be a $3 million restaurant, you have to steal $3 million from the 20 restaurants around you. So you are not creating new business. That does not happen. People don't go, oh, there's a new restaurant, I'm going to go out and dine one extra night a week. They're going out on Tuesday night or Friday night, and that's when they're going out. They're not going to, except for maybe your opening events where you've invited them and it's something special, they're not going to go spend extra money just because you're the 36th restaurant in the neighborhood. So you have to think about that. So the surrounding neighborhood and the demographics really matter. The setting of the property, like here, like we knew when we were going through this that the southwest corner here facing the field, and we have some really cool things here. So we have common consumption. We had the laws changed here just for Stanley Marketplace, where you can actually pour a beer in one of our labeled plastic cups and you can walk around the mall and go shopping. You just can't go into another liquor licensed establishment. But that field out there is ours, and that's part of our liquor license. So you can have a drink and go out to the soccer field. So thinking about all of those things matter in the setting of the property. So we knew that this southwest corner, being close to the field and stuff like that, was the best location in the building. So that's the only reason, if this was on the other corner of the building, this would not be as popular. The sunsets right over the corner of our building here. Colorado sunsets are amazing, so that's part of the reason this is designed the way that it is. So you have to think about that. If you want to go stick your restaurant in the middle of a strip mall, you need to think about what that experience is. If you're going to do something like Chipotle does, and I'm not bagging on Chipotle, Chipotle is great. The founder of Chipotle, the original Chipotle is in Denver, and Steve used to actually deliver burritos to our house down the street, the founder of Chipotle, Steve Ells. He's a really interesting guy. So Chipotle is fantastic. I'm just making their experience as an option. Exactly. Sorry, Steve. I'm going to say that a lot today, sorry. You just have, if that's the kind of location you're going to get, you either have to build your experience around your location, or you have to pick the location about the experience that's in your head for the property and the experience that you're doing. Perfect. The internal and external space, and can you make it fit what you're doing? You have to think about that. Do you need a rooftop deck like we've done at Golden? I would love to have a rooftop deck here.
Us too. Maybe.
Things like that. And is that part of what you want to do? One of the big things is, are you going to be a destination restaurant, or are you going to be a walk-up neighborhood restaurant? So there's a few places in town. I'll take, for example, a restaurant Kevin Taylor used to run. That was a destination restaurant, but it was a place that people went once or twice a year. It wasn't once or twice a week, once or twice a month. which is something you have to think about too. Are you trying to be a regular bar traffic, or are you trying to be once a year? And if it's once a year, then you have to get more money out of them while they're in. If it's going to be once a week, then you want to make it affordable for them to come. So you have to think about, do people have to get in their car to drive here? Do people already drive to the neighborhood like they do in Golden? Are they already coming to the building? Are they walking distance? Like we are lucky to have the Central Park / Stapleton neighborhood around here, so people can ride their bikes and walk over here, which also makes it easier for having a few beers on the beer wall and walking home. So we have a lot of that here. We could use a lot more parking with these apartments that we're building over here. It took up a lot of our parking, and it definitely affected our business, but we still get a lot of walk-ups. So those are kind of the main things that you can't ignore when you're looking at your location. Can't ignore. The other thing is making sure that you're in a municipality that's going to allow you to do what you're doing. You have to make sure that PourMyBeer self-tap is friendly for the building department and the powers that be in the area. So, because it's legal in all the states, but not all the municipalities are quite so embracing it yet. So just be aware of that.
Perfect. Thank you for that detailed answer. As you guys heard, there is a soccer field where we can have after party with our drinks in our hand and maybe play some soccer too. So we'll see how the party goes. My next question, this is also something we get asked a lot, and that's specifically about negotiation process. What should you ask when negotiating for lease? You have a lot of experience again with multiple PourMyBeer venues. What are some of the things that you really need to keep in mind, and you kind of have to, hold your foot there?
So, in picking your favorite spot, you have to make sure that it fits into your business model that you've built. And typical leases now are somewhere between 7 and 10%, depending on whether you're lucky enough to get a flat rate rent. Most of them have what's called a natural break point. So once you hit a certain amount in sales, then you're paying 10% rent. Anything below that 10%, you're going to pay a specific amount per month. And you need to understand how that works, especially if you do a blowout location and you do, like the numbers we do in Golden up there. If you're a 10% rent, it's going to be a big number. We're lucky enough to own the property up there, which I highly recommend if you can partner with the property and be on the property side as well. It greatly de-risks you turn two 10 to 12%, maybe 15% businesses into one 25 to 30% business, so if one's barely making it, your whole project's making it better. So we're lucky enough, because of all of our experience, that's what we do now. We don't, with the exception of a couple projects we have coming up, we don't do leases anymore. But the main thing is you've got to have your pro forma built based on your top line sales, and you have to account for every possible thing that you think is going to be, that you're going to spend money on a regular basis. You've got to have your rent model with CAM, and I'll talk about that in a sec, built into that, because and you've got to have a worst case scenario. If you end up in a 15-20% rent because you've missed it, you're going out of business. This is a 10 to 15% profit business when you do it well. So if you miss any one of your lines by 5%, that's half of your profit. So you really have to, and going back to the lease negotiations, when you go in and you find that project that you love and this is going to be amazing or whatever, you've got to stick to your guns on what you're willing to pay for it. Don't fall in love with the project and overpay for the property, because the project will fail, likely fail, and you're going to be in a worse place than you were beforehand. You're better off going to look for the better project. If you find an A location and you're not able, because of your experience or other things that you've done, to sign an A location, I recommend finding a chef partner or an operator or something like that has the experience and has a resume and financial background that can help you sign it. You're better off being partners with somebody that allows you to sign a great lease, because then you're on a lease and now your next location, maybe you can go out on your own. So if you found something that you're in love with and either A, the landlord doesn't want to sign with you or you're trying to get a better rate, try and find somebody who can help you sign the lease. It makes a big difference. Makes all the difference in the world. So.
Awesome, thank you. How do you go about budgeting the cost during the entire process? And did you, for example, specifically for Stanley, do you know if they go under or overestimate the budget that they needed to get it started?
I've never seen a restaurant open that went under budget or any other project. So no, this was well over budget. Mm-hmm. Well over budget. I do know that. Still make those payments every month. Okay. SBA is a great resource for getting money. They can help with some of these things I'm talking about. But for me, when I go through, so I have a critical path that I built through all the projects, and it has a list of every single thing you can imagine buying. How many spoons? Do you need napkins? How many rolls of toilet paper? How many chairs? You have to go through that process and list every single thing. And in envisioning your property, you have to walk through the space and see the guest experience and walk through like being a server. And go, what do I have to put down? Oh, I forgot to order the mugs on the table to put the silverware in. One of my favorite things to do on the envisioning piece, and when we remodeled this place, after the construction crew would leave and they were leaving late, 10 or 11, I would stick around for a couple of hours at night. And I would just walk through the space and look at everything and picture the changes in my head because we were still evolving. So these tables that you guys are sitting at were actually part of this they were actually like built on benches, and one of the nights I came up with a way to change them into just beer halls, so we didn't have to buy new tables. But I'll spend a couple of hours by myself in the space, just walking around, just trying to get a feel and make sure I didn't miss anything. It's kind of weird, but for me it's a little bit of fun, but it also makes it so you don't miss as many things. You still miss things, but it reduces that number. So you have to get a good budgeting, operational budgeting pro forma. From the operations side, on the building the location, you have to put together what's called critical path with every single thing every single thing that you can imagine spending money on to get your project out of the ground. Now, some of the things like construction, especially today with supply lines and stuff like that, you have to plan a significant number over whatever anybody tells you. If they tell you it's 100 grand, it's going to be 130 grand. And it might be that an item's 100 grand. And then they go, well, you're not going to get that for a year right now. And then they'll say, or I can go order it somewhere else for 130 grand. And you have to be ready for that in today's environment. We just ordered, there's some boxes sitting up by the front window. I ordered ice machines to go on top of our soda machines here in April. And 3 weeks ago, they were supposed to be here 1st of June. 3 weeks ago, my supplier, who's been working with us for 20 some years, Rick, came and said, yeah, they called me and said the first one's not going to be until the first week of August, the second one will be next year. Oh, wow. So we had to change direction and go get these other ones, which I would never order. It's Chinese made ones, which are more readily available. And they were ready and they showed up a few days later. Now I can't get them mounted because you can't get the mounting plate on there. And they're the same price as the better ones that I would normally get. So you're going to have those issues. One of my buddies is a project manager doing construction, and they have contracts now that they're writing, and they're demanding that their subcontractors, as soon as they sign the contract, put all the stuff that they need for a year from now's project in a warehouse and hold it. So you have to buy the stuff today that you're expecting to buy a year from now. So you have to think about your cash flows and such like that. So budget or list everything, and envision it, list everything, budget every single thing, and then add a big number on top of it, because it's going to be a big number on top of it. You know, if you go to the store and it says it's going to be $10, by the time you order it, it's going to be $15. So there's not a good, I mean, short of that, it's good to do some research, and there's some lists online of things you need for a restaurant. Pull every piece that you can, read every single one, because somebody will have something on there that you forgot. Toothpicks, for example. You know, little things like that. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jim. Also, I just want to do a quick reminder. We do have a PourMyBeer University. It has a lot of helpful resources for like where to really start with budget. It's on our website, so you can hop into navigation, click University, and learn a little bit more about that. But I think Jim already gave you a lot of great helpful information. We have last two questions of this first section of getting started. So before we serve our lunch, let's ask these last two. Jim, what type of advertising or marketing did you do after you switched to self-pour setup? So obviously it's a big switch for a restaurant, right? Going from traditional setup, having that traditional bartender, to go to self-pour. Did you do some special messaging for the community? Did you do special marketing, maybe any advertising?
We did a little bit because we were able to do this quickly. We didn't have to do quite as much of a relaunch, but we did. The main thing we did was when we reopened was do some VIP events with some local influencers that were able to tell people, hey, things have changed and they're reopened. So we didn't do much in our normal operations. Our new operations, we have a whole program that we use, like what we did at Golden Mill. We have people that we invite down, and we do one-on-ones with some local like television, newspaper, and stuff like that. And instead of just having one big event, we actually bring them in one at a time and give them a one-off experience or a hand-holding experience, person by person, which gives makes them feel more special, but they also get to ask the questions they want to ask specifically, and then you also get a series of releases that come out as you're getting ready for it. For this, I would have done a lot more social. We were not 4.5 years ago, as socially present, on social media present. Probably a better way to put it.
Did you have agency handling that, or was it your crew?
No, one of the owners' families is in marketing, advertising, so they handled that. So I wasn't as in charge of that. I will say, I would recommend having local versus distant marketing. You want to have somebody that's in the market and knows the local contacts, influencers, and stuff like that. One of the owner's families is in Chicago, so they didn't know the local market as well. And when you have a personal relationship with your PR team or your marketers and such, they tend to be more responsive to you and a little more hand-holdy, which is great for me because I'm not so good at that side of things. So, okay. But that's all we did here. So.
Thank you so much, and I'll definitely encourage everybody to check them out on social media, especially if you have Instagram. I love following them on Instagram. I see some great dishes and great new drinks, which always makes me plan a next trip to Denver. So definitely follow them on Instagram if you like that social media platform.
Nice job, Dana.
Awesome. All right, this is my final question of the getting started section. So we're going to get to our break here soon, get some more drinks, get some food, and hopefully stretch our legs a little bit before we talk about opening the doors and the ongoing success and some of Jim's secret on that. So my last question for you is, from the time of completion of installing your first beverage wall with iPour, how quickly did you open your doors?
Well, we were fortunate. We had a good plan. So we were closed for 30 days. We closed on January 16th, opened on February 16th. So one of the owners here is a general contractor, so we had some resources that most don't. So we were very fortunate. Then they worked long hours. We were here from 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight every day, in doing all of these things. So for us, it was very quick. I don't recommend planning on that. I would give yourself at least 60 days if you're going to switch over from a traditional operation. And then if you beat that time, great. We really didn't want to be closed any more than we had to, both for revenue reasons, but also because there was enough traffic here, and we didn't want to kill the restaurant that was here completely. We really wanted the people that were coming before to come back, and we didn't want them to show up with our beer wall closed, or our doors closed,
Yeah.
with our doors closed, and think that we were out of business. So we had signage up, remodeling. Can't wait to see you in, I think we said 6 weeks or something like that. But but so for us it was 30 days. We did a pretty good remodel of not remodel inside, but we added some things. Things like power at all the outlets or all the tables around the side for charging cell phones and stuff like that. There was nothing in here. I highly recommend that you put an outlet every 6 inches if you can. I wish I had them at all these tables. The other day, people were running their own extension cords across the patio so they could have a group meeting at one of our outdoor tables. So I should have ran power underneath the concrete. That's not happening now. So interior-wise, we did a few things. It wasn't a massive change to the feeling, and so the feeling was different, but to the actual structure in here. The main thing was putting the beer wall in. The beer wall, we got it in pretty quickly. Because we did a stick built with and spray foamed it ourselves, so it's a custom built wall. It's a little different than slapping up a pre-made cooler and then sticking the skin on it and stuff like that. It actually adds a little bit of time to it. And actually, this has more R value than one of those pre-built coolers do. Really, there's a couple of scheduling tools that contractors use, and I can't remember the name of it, I'm sorry, that you really want to think about, and you want to have your hands on when each one of the contractors come in and be on top of it. Don't let your project manager do it. One of the other unfortunate things in the construction industry right now is that there's not enough subcontractors. My buddy who's a project manager, he told me a story that they'll have somebody on their way to the site, and they'll get a call from another contractor that needs their tile done or whatever it is. And they'll say, "How much are you making today?" And they'll say, "I'm going to make $5,000." He goes, "I'll pay $8,000." So they turn around on their way to the job and go to whoever's going to pay them. So it's that kind of dynamic environment right now. So you're going to have people not show up, and you just have to add time. Just like the 30% for your budget, you have to add time to your timeline of getting your doors open, because people are they're just not going to be there. So if you think it's going to take a year to build your project, it's going to be 18 months. And there's just no way around that right now in the current environment. Now they're talking about recession and stuff like that, so maybe that'll affect it a little bit, but it doesn't look like it. Mm-hmm. So.
And how long, because you did two different things here. First you went from traditional bar to the iPour setup, and then eventually you switched the iPour self-pour system to PourMyBeer. How long did that switch take you?
1 day.
Okay.
So we had...
did you have contractors, or was that just the PourMyBeer installation crew?
We did not have contractors. So, sorry, this is going to sound weird, but the cabinetry above this, here, I built all that in my backyard in sections and moved it on site. And the night we closed to rip out the old system, I had my staff stay, and we tore out the old cabinetry, hung the new cabinetry, and then put the finish on it. PourMyBeer showed up in the morning, did the whole place, and the next morning we were open. So we were closed for 1 day. The rest of my team came in and painted walls and cleaned. We did like a spring cleaning day of it. It was really, well, it was fun from my standpoint. I don't know if it's fun for them, but the place was brand new and fresh, different colors, all that kind of stuff the next morning. So if you plan it right, you can have it done the next day.
That's intense.
Yeah, it was fun.
Can I share your number as a contractor help?
Yeah.
Maybe they
I'll send you some pictures. I'm I'm not doing another one of these. I'm not building it myself. I'm doing more. So yeah, but it was fun. You know, it's kind of it's incredibly rewarding when it's all done like that. But at some point, you're better off letting other people do it. There's some things that I shouldn't have done here that I won't do again. I'll pay somebody else to do it. But in that also, in the not being able to get contractors, you have to also, if there's something that you can do yourself and you can have it staged and ready to go, I highly recommend it. So, and you guys, PourMyBeer was great. This wasn't actually you, this was Ed. Was great about helping me schedule the timing. We wanted to wait until summer was over before we changed it. If I'd have known what an improvement it was going to be in the flow for our guests and the revenue capture with going from the problems we were having with iPour to PourMyBeer, I would have done it in the summer. It would have been worth closing in the summer. So we waited till the 3rd week of September, which is the first slow week for us going into the other season, then closed on I think it was a Monday night. Wednesday morning we were open. Yeah, it was great. It was really great. And your team was great. And I don't know if we had the videos from or whatever, but they were done. Yeah, they were done earlier than they thought they were going to be. So we actually probably could have opened for a late dinner the next day. So my team would have been in construction clothes, but it's been okay.
Just a quick reminder, at the time Stanley only had the inside setup, so that's 37 taps, right? They didn't used to have the outside patio. Well, they had the outside patio, but not the beverage wall out there.
Yeah, so we can talk about that later, but the outside was very different. We built all of that during COVID. So we had half a covered dirt, no sidewall patio. So all of the outside operations were done last year. So that's a different part of this thing. Yeah, so that was not one day.
We'll get into that. Yeah. Okay, this actually concludes our first section on getting started. Lunch is getting served over there, and I'm starting to smell it, and it's amazing. So everybody, feel free to grab something to eat, and it's still going to be they're still going to be bringing some more things, but it looks pretty tempting from what I'm seeing. Grab a drink, stretch your legs, and we're going to be back here in about 20 minutes. I'll call you guys out. So when we are back rolling, and the same goes for our virtual attendees, just we'll start doing some sort of signs here and waving, so everybody will get the idea that we're coming back to second section. Thank you so much, Jim.